Half the U.S. population does not know where its food comes from, according to a recent national poll. It comes from mostly Hispanic farm workers, 3 million of them, called heroes for working non-stop through the COVID pandemic, says civil rights icon Dolores Huerta, who with the late Cesar Chavez in the mid-1960s began fighting for farm workers' rights, better wages, and a better life for them. Though today she says farm workers still face high risks, particularly during COVID, when they have been 3 times more likely to contract COVID-19 than workers in other industries, according to national health officials.
They have been out there every single day, picking the food that people need. They should have been paid hazard pay because they were risking their lives every day that they were out there. And many of them, of course, did get COVID. Many of them did pass away, and that was really unfortunate when you think that the people that are putting the food on our table every day, that they don't have the protection everybody else has. The owners of these farms, they're not there with the workers. They live in Los Angeles, they live in San Francisco. They're in their nice air-conditioned offices while the farm workers are out there in the heat of the sun, over 100 degrees. And yet somehow they're not really, you might say, respected. They're not recognized for the work that they do. And they were not protected during the pandemic.
So essentially, farm workers in California have begun helping themselves through a nonprofit organization run by farm workers, former farm workers, and their families called CFF, the California Farm Worker Foundation, in California's Central Valley. For example, CFF brought healthcare workers directly to the fields during the pandemic to examine, test, and vaccinate farm workers, says CFF Executive Director Hernan Hernandez.
And these are the individuals that continue to stabilize the country and that allows the individuals that are in the front lines, just like the doctors and nurses treating the COVID-19 patients, these are individuals that are also in the front lines making sure that the economy continues to move by providing the food to the tables of hundreds of millions of Americans.
Hernandez says farm workers remain among the most overworked and underpaid laborers in the United States, some making as little as $10 an hour, for work that takes a physical toll on their bodies. For example, it's shocking for many people to learn that the average lifespan of a farm worker in the U.S. is 49 years of age.
The average lifespan of a farm worker is 49 years old. That's unacceptable.
Unacceptable, he says, that too few U.S. government leaders come to these fields to see for themselves how these long hours and low pay for such important work is adding up to early deaths for the average farm worker. CFF's Maria Ibarra worries for her parents, who've been farm workers, she says, most of their lives.
I love them. I love them. Especially with the life expectancy of 49. It's like, they're just so humble, They're very modest and hardworking, and it's not fair that they get to live like 49, like the life expectancy. It's like they're the most hardworking. It shouldn't be like that.
However, it is like that, say farm workers we've profiled over a period of several weeks in California to the lettuce fields of Yuma, Arizona. Each day for these farm workers in Arizona begins here in Mexico, crossing into Arizona on the U.S. side of the border, often as early as 1 o'clock in the morning. An estimated 20,000 farm workers arriving here to San Luis, Arizona. They have temporary work visas from the U.S. government that allows them to work in the U.S. and then return to Mexico at the end of each day. Hundreds of white buses called crew buses take them to fields each morning and then back here to the border. They arrive often so early to the U.S. side each morning to avoid long lines later in the morning and possibly missing their bus to the fields. One of them on the left here, Angel, a family man, explains more.
Es que el problema de nosotros en la mañana cuando llegamos, las filas son muy largas a veces para entrar aquí a Arizona. Hay días que son 3-4 horas de fila.
¿Tienes familia?
Tengo familia, sí, en México. Y mi esposa, dos niños, dos niñas. Pues sí, los compañeros siempre andamos, pues por el trabajo andamos siempre soportando fríos, todo eso. Y sí nos gustaría pues un poquito más de ayuda para eso.
At least 20,000 people cross every morning or more.
Luis Marquez, a U.S. resident here in San Luis, says farm workers arriving here hours early so they don't miss work end up sleeping on the ground for a few hours until their workday begins. This morning is a bitter cold one for them. You're sleeping on cardboard.
Yes, that's their bed.
What a life.
It's probably 45 degrees. It's cold.
Luis Marquez says he grew up working these fields in Arizona. The hard, honest work he learned here, he says, was his foundation that led to his long, distinguished career as a police officer here. And today, he is president of the local school district in San Luis, the district building named after him. Here he is in the center at 16, meeting legendary farm worker labor leader Cesar Chavez on the left.
This is me with Cesar Chavez. I'm shaking his hand. And the other one is my twin brother, Martin. He's my identical twin. And I was 16 years old, and he did the walk for the boycott of the grapes.
Though he says it's the farm workers themselves he admires most. Luis's older brother, Ramon, oldest of 13 kids in their family, remains a farm worker today. Ramon drives laborers in a crew bus today, making a long run with workers to the fields just before sunrise.
Bueno, hoy este día son aproximadamente unas 35 millas de la frontera allí para acá. En ocasiones vamos a como 60 millas más retirado y aproximadamente unas 2 horas de camino.
Watermelons are what Ramon and his crew are responsible for growing. And yet few consumers know anything about the process. On this morning, for example, in Yuma, Arizona, thousands of watermelon seedlings will be transplanted into the ground, carefully loaded onto a specialized tractor. The tractor begins moving over a field and punctures holes into the earth. The seedlings are then delicately dropped down and pushed into the earth. These are female seedlings that go into the ground first. They are then followed by male seedlings. Again, it's a process, quite a technical process, needing precision from farm workers that many people who enjoy watermelon are unaware of. Lupita, here at 43, has become the forewoman of this crew after working 20 years. She's a single mother.
Sí, tengo dos. Tengo dos niñas y una nieta. Y el mensaje para el mundo es que sí, es difícil, pero todo podemos superar si uno queremos, si las ganas que tienes de salir adelante.
Sylvia Pantoja, who has worked in the fields for 30 years, is also a single mother, today leading an all-male crew pruning cherry trees in California's Central Valley. Sylvia has worked throughout the COVID pandemic.
Mis hijos, tengo 4 hijos, 3 mujeres, un niño. Y pues orgullosa de mi familia. Ellas trabajaron aquí en el campo, ahora son profesionales, pero desde que ellas tenían los 16 años, las traje a trabajar aquí con nosotros. Para nosotros los trabajadores del campo, porque pues somos trabajadores esenciales, nos arriesgamos mientras en otras empresas trabajaban desde su casa, nosotros no podemos hacerlo. Tuvimos que venir aquí, trabajar, dar la cara y pues solamente cuidándonos a nosotros mismos y tratando de cuidar a nuestras familias, a nuestros hijos.
She and her crew managing to survive COVID, she says, through their camaraderie and tacos.
You want to try one, Mike?
when they get one of two 15-minute breaks each day.
Hey, un taco?
Gracias. Gracias por este machín comidas.
Machín.
Necesitamos energía para trabajo, ¿no?
Sí.
Es muy importante.
Dolores Huerta says the other risks that farm workers are facing today include the reemergence of pesticide poisoning, because bans against certain pesticides by the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, were lifted by the previous U.S. administration of Donald Trump.
Unfortunately, when President Trump came in, he took a lot of some of those pesticides that were on the restricted list and said it's okay to use them. And I think it's not going to stop until we put the use of economic poisons, this is what pesticides are, put them under Health and Human Services, take them out of the EPA, take them out of agriculture, and put them where they belong, because these are economic poisons that are put on our food. We have, in the United States of America, the highest incidence of cancer than any other country. And we've got to change this. This is really wrong.
And getting skin cancer from working long hours in the sun, she says, is a risk farm workers take.
Yes, the fact that farm workers are out there in the sun all day long, yeah, they are exposed and they are subjected to cancer, and also, you know, heat exposure, because it gets so hot that every year we have farm workers that die just from the heat.
And she says for these people who feed the nation, they often cannot even feed themselves and their children. A crisis of food insecurity today, she says, that has struck many families during the COVID pandemic.
There is food insecurity, and the way that this affected the farm workers is that during the pandemic, kids weren't going to school. So that meant that one of the members of the family had to stay home and watch the kids and help them with their schoolwork. And so right away, that was a loss of 50% of the income for the family. And that, of course, resulted then in food insecurity.
Additionally, in California, there is a severe shortage of decent, affordable housing for many farm workers. Farm workers in California don't return home to Mexico each day, like in Arizona. They live here in central California, hundreds of miles from the Mexican border, permanently, with legal working documents, and many who do not have legal documents to be here. In any case, they need somewhere to live, and many find it impossible to find housing. CFF's Hernan Hernandez says it's a housing crisis that state government leaders need to urgently address. For example, farm workers make on average only $2,000 a month, and half of that must go toward rent for dwellings that average $1,000 a month. So they say it's not uncommon for 2 or 3 families to share one house, up to 12 people living in one home. Homes that in many cases are not even legally constructed or permitted homes. Crudely constructed in backyards of homes known as back houses.
Just walk down this alley, every single house has a back house. That's right now costing about $800 to $1,000. These houses are getting filled by farm workers. They're priced out of the market. They can't afford a house here because now it goes for about $350,000. They won't qualify, which means that they're integrating into these back houses. And you look at the condition of some of these back houses and you would probably think that you were across the border. And every individual deserves an opportunity to fulfill whatever life has destined them to fulfill. And we gotta make sure that the population that we serve has that same opportunity.
Obama, when they got the Medal of Freedom.
Dolores Huerta says her famous slogan, "Si se puede, yes we can," was inspired by all the farm workers she has served as a labor leader all these years. At 92 years old, Huerta, through her Dolores Huerta Foundation, develops future labor leaders and is fighting racism against Hispanic farm workers, she says, by advocating for the government to require mandatory ethnic studies courses in schools.
We do need to have ethnic studies in the state of California. It's going to be mandatory at the high school level. But we need to have those ethnic studies at the kindergarten level and with the first graders, because little children, they are not born racist. We are one human race, and that people should not be discriminated because of their color.
Dolores was recently a guest speaker for another powerful advocate for farm workers, the National Farm Worker Ministry, whose president, Reverend Hector Rodriguez, summed up what the public and what food and agriculture consumers can do to better understand, appreciate, and support farm workers.
I would urge anyone who likes to eat, anyone who would like to see the fruits of the labor that farm workers bring to our table, to go and meet with a farm worker, even spend a day working with them as I did. You will learn a lot. You will learn a lot about how food comes to your table, certainly the vegetables and our salads. If you ate today, a good way to thank a farm worker is to go out and meet one and work alongside one if you can.
Luis Marquez thanks his retired farm worker father, Jose, every day, he says, for the 50 years he worked in the fields to help raise his 13 children and several dozen grandchildren today from his meager earnings as a farm worker in the United States.
Enseñarle sus manos de tantas trabajar, estas manos trabajaron, levantaron mucha lechuga.
Tengo muchos años ya.
Tiene muchos años. ¿Cuántos años tiene, papá? A ver si se acuerda, porque se le olvida, en vez se los quita. ¿Cuántos años tiene?
94.
97 va a cumplir.
At the age of 97, Luis's father, Jose, has lived nearly twice the present lifespan of most farm workers. For this, his family is grateful.
¿Quién lo quiere mucho, a ver?
Usted y todos los demás.
Ah, ya ve, todos lo queremos. Ay, mi viejo. Pero es una chulada, ¿eh?
Luis says the U.S. should be grateful for the 3 million farm workers who help feed the country.